Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. You may recall that a few days back we got a surprise title update in Warzone, and it ended up including a decent amount of weapon changes and meta updates. We got some surprise buffs, some surprise nerfs, and I figured I'd also wait an extra day just because yesterday with the whole Shadow Siege reveal event and the MW3 reveal, we got a brand new weapon in the M13C. At least if you want to call it a brand new weapon. It certainly doesn't feel like it in game. It feels very similar to the M13 in a lot of ways, but I digress. We do have a new meta update to break down, and that's why we are here on the tier list. I've got my handy dandy notes off to the side breaking down all the changes that were made that honestly have a pretty big impact on some of what you may want to be using in various different aspects of the game. Ranked, standard pubs, resurgence, you name it. But first things first, we got the M13C to rank. I've gone through, I've leveled this thing up, and boy is it mediocre. I mean, it's competitive for being sniper support, but it really is not anything special. Its velocity is very mediocre. It's definitely meant as a sniper support weapon for what it's worth. Like long range absolutely is the M13B. This is sniper support all the way, but its TTK and its velocity compared to the Chimera, the Razorback, the Avancer, the 74U, just not it. It doesn't really compete with these options whatsoever. So like, it's an all right gun for some close range, but it's definitely not something that is I would consider top tier whatsoever. I can't say I'm all that surprised though. It's absolutely a filler weapon. I think the only new attachment it brought to the game was one stock. The other ones were already available on the M13 with like this other stock, and then the barrel that was like there from the start of season 5. So very strange weapon update here. I think mainly to entice players to play the reveal event, because this thing is, like I just said, mediocre at best. But outside of the M13C, like I said, we've got a lot of weapon updates to break down here. As we're going through everything, if you guys want to guarantee you're always up to date with everything going on in Warzone, the meta breakdowns, the latest news and updates, patch notes, be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on those post notifications, and join us on the road to 1 million subs. And if you guys enjoyed this video, if you find it helpful at all, do me a favor, drop a like on the video itself, would be seriously appreciated. Hey everyone, just a heads up, right now G Fuel is doing a back to school buy one get one free, a BOGO event. So if you were looking to restock on any flavors right now, or if you want to try G Fuel for the first time, there quite literally is no better time than right now. You can get a whole tub and get a new one for free. Fantastic deal. If you want to check it out, link will be down in the description below. If you're looking for some flavor recommendations, my top 3 right now: watermelon limeade, absolutely loving it; starfruit, noisy butters flavor, another phenomenal one; and then hype sauce, my all-time #1 goat flavor. That's what I would recommend. But like I said, check out the link down below. They got flavors for everyone, and this BOGO event is the best time to try something or restock on your favorites. But the Chimera ended up getting a buff. It got a mid-range damage buff, and then also a neck and upper torso multiplier buff. So really just incentivizing having good accuracy with the Chimera. This thing was a little bit behind some of the other main sniper support options here, but definitely now is even more competitive with these. It's not a buff that's going to make it absolute meta by any means, but one that definitely is bringing it more in line with the 74U, the Razorback, and the Avancer. Really competitive sniper support meta right now. Speaking of the Avancer, it actually got a close range damage nerf. However, it got buffs to its mid damage and then all upper body multipliers, so upper torso, neck, head. Again, incentivizing good accuracy, which with this thing is very easy. It's a very low recoil weapon. This is probably my true #1 sniper support gun and option. As of right now, the Razorback probably a nice second, and then 74U and Chimera are kind of like neck and neck there. They're all good. To me, the Avancer stands out the most. Again, not something that's going to make it absolute meta, because you may be more comfortable with the Razorback and you have plenty of opportunities to outgun the Avancer there, but a buff that definitely makes it even more viable as sniper support. You like to see it. Bit of a strange one here. The Lockman 556 got a headshot multiplier buff, but it didn't really do anything all that significant. It's already a low recoil weapon, but its TTK after they nerfed it recently really hasn't been anything to write home about. It's still right there with like the TAQ-56 and the Hemlock. Super easy to use, but not all that rewarding. This is one that, I don't know, might get some comments because you guys are always talking about it. The M16, it got buffed. It got a close and mid damage buff, and then also a limb multiplier buff. I have it in below average. I've looked at the stats time and time again. On paper, the thing is nuts. Like, it has a crazy TTK, except in game, regardless of how you're shooting it, semi-auto, burst, whatever, it doesn't translate there. And that's because the accuracy on this thing is so strange. With bursts, they're not accurate enough, and the bursts aren't stable enough to consistently land shots, which just hurt your TTK again and again and again, especially over longer ranges. That said, I feel like the buffs that it's gotten have bumped it at least out of below average, probably into the average category. It's still not good. easily the worst rifle and one of the worst primaries in the game, but it can compete. It's just so mediocre at quite literally everything it does. Another one that I'm pretty surprised by, just because I guess I didn't really see it coming, the TAQ Recon ended up getting a close range damage and then also a close range buff. So its first damage range is going to be a little bit more effective now. This thing is really meant for mid to long range though, so that's not a buff that's going to make it like crazy good or anything. It just makes it a bit more versatile, but you're probably not going to run into that many fights in that area with it. Another funny one, honestly, the Lockman 762, they actually buffed this with just the limb multiplier, so that's not anything all that crazy, and again, not a change that's going to make it like absolute meta or anything, but we know how absurd and how broken the TTK is on the Lockman 762 in full auto. We also know its recoil is pretty much uncontrollable outside of like 45 meters, so that's why it's not an absolute meta option, but funny that they buffed arguably the most broken gun in the game. One that I'm definitely keeping my eye on, the SO14 upper body multipliers, so it's, you know, neck, head, and whatnot. It's going to be better for more accurate players. Its TTK and semi-auto and full auto is still pretty competitive, but again, you have other options that are still super competitive in that area for the mid-range, that this is not going to be a standout option in absolute meta. Definitely a more competitive top tier choice though. Now the TAQ-V, admittedly before this update happened, it's quite possible you could have argued this was absolute meta. Now personally, I feel like the recoil was enough of a balance that it wasn't the #1 go-to gun. You could still get away with using several other options. However, the TAQ-V caught some nerfs and they were enough to make it absolutely not your #1 go-to option anymore, if that was the case. So it absolutely, I feel like, still falls into top tier. It's more borderline competitive now just because you have more recoil for less of a payoff than some of these other guns. They ended up nerfing its all-around damage, close, mid, long, everything got nerfed for its damage there. It got an upper body multiplier nerf and a limb multiplier nerf. So really wherever you're hitting there, it's going to be doing less damage. It still, like I said, has a decent TTK, but it's going to have more recoil than the other mid-range options like the SO14, the Squall, even the LMGs and rifles there. So like, damage wise, I'd say it's top tier, and I'll leave it here and give it the benefit of the doubt. I'm curious to know what you guys have to say about this in the comments below, but control wise, I feel like it's probably more in competitive, so it's definitely fringe there for sure. Like you could go either way and you'd have an argument for either placement. And then we get into some of the stranger ones here. The Lockwood MK2, a weapon that really is just there for gimmicks, for having fun and quick scoping. It got some buffs. Its mid damage got buffed, its long range damage got buffed, and its torso and limb multipliers got buffed. But it's still a very unforgiving weapon, even though it does have a faster fire rate than some of the other snipers or marksman rifles. If you miss shots, you're probably not going to win a fight, and its damage still is not anything all that crazy, so it's probably staying in average, but it got a little bit better for those that like to use this style of gun. Then we saw some interesting shotgun buffs. The Expedite got a mid and a far damage buff, and then a general range buff. I feel like this makes it more of a competitive shotgun, honestly. It's definitely not the KV broadside, that's for sure, but it's a better option than the Lockwood or the Brysons. The MX Guardian is still pretty decent. It also got some changes that we'll get to here in just a moment, but the Expedite, one that players who enjoy shotguns might be sleeping on right now because it is pretty dominant. I know Gumi's talked about this one. It's spicy. Speaking of the Lockwood, it got a close to mid damage buff and a range buff, but it's so unforgiving. It's never going to be anything better than average unless you can suddenly one shot at 900 meters, no matter what, just because it only has 2 shots. You miss one, you're absolutely done for. Sometimes even if you land both, you don't get a knock, and then the player's going to take you out anyways. And like I said, the Guardian got some changes. Its close range damage got buffed, but its far range got a nerf. So kind of a strange one there. Doesn't drastically make it better or worse. It just, you know, optimizes it for shotgun range a little bit, but its damage is still subpar compared to what the broadside can do right now. And then the Fennec actually got a significant buff. Its damage everywhere got a buff. So close range, mid range, long range. The problem here is its magazine size and its damage per mag with the TTK that we have now. It just won't ever go out of competitive unless it has an absolutely broken close range TTK, just because you have to spray and pray with this thing and you're always going to be reloading. It just doesn't kill quick enough yet that fast fire rate and low damage per mag is worth it. Like I said, there's a chance that they could buff it more and they break the close range TTK, and that's about the only chance that this one will have competing with the top tier SMGs. Then also, lastly here for the patch notes, the Signal got a nerf. Its neck and upper torso multipliers got nerfed, so they really are just incentivizing headshots. It seems strange on a spammable weapon like the Signal, but it's still the #1 sniper option for ranked in my opinion. And that's it. Outside of the patch notes, a couple of other adjustments I want to make here. RPK, I feel like, is a top tier choice now for sure. And then I also want to highlight the Squall. Each of these, because of the TAQ-V nerf, really stand out to me as viable long-range options. RPK being a lower recoil and decent TTK option, the Squall being a really good TTK option, decent control. We're also all very familiar with this by now, so I feel like most players are going to default away from the TAQ-V and back to the Cronin Squall, making the Squall and the ISO probably the #1 meta loadout for ranked and for pubs. If you're going for, you know, high kill games, you're trying to win in ranked, obviously, that's probably what I would recommend the most. But really, this update ended up just making things a bit more competitive yet again. I feel like some of the nerfs were a bit useless, like in the case of the MK2, the Lockwood and whatnot. Some of them definitely balance things out more with the TAQ-V. You've opened up the long-range meta even more. It's still an option, but definitely not that #1 go-to. Still don't know how the ISO hasn't been nerfed. It's absolutely the best SMG choice. But I digress. That is going to wrap things up for today. If you guys found the video helpful or if you enjoyed it, let me know by dropping a like on it. If you're new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button on your way out as well. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy. Have an awesome rest of your day. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.